Every day, we have to make decisions. Some are complex, some are simple, some are urgent, most are trivial, and most of us don't go back and review each and every one, categorizing and analyzing them for better understanding of why we did what we did. In the cognitive process of decision-making, by Yin-Shu Wang and Gunther Rue from the University of Calgary, it states, the taxonomy of strategies and corresponding criteria for decision-making can be classified into 4 categories known as intuitive, empirical, heuristic, and rational. Now, the idea that a decision can be broken down into a mathematical process is wild. And once they busted out the mathematical formulas and functions with italicized letters and Greek alphabet characters to prove the science behind these decisions, well, that's when I made the decision to stop reading. But the concept that decisions are based on criteria and contexts is important. Once we define and categorize something, we can come up with a proactive strategy for how to approach it. And to marketers, the idea of influencing the decision-making process and doing it more effectively is the focus of our work. So, does this scientific approach to decision-making really work for those of us that don't have a master's degree in theoretical statistical analysis? Should we be wielding these heavy concepts? Is there a simple way to understand and break down the decision-making process using a scientific approach, and then use that to our advantage when it comes to advertising for a law firm, or making business decisions, or even helping with personal decisions? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Understanding and influencing choices with decision science. And we promise to keep the math to a minimum. Are you ready? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that doesn't respond well to being told what to do. I'm Jake Sanders, and with me today, as always, is Paul Julius. Paul, why can't we listen and follow directions like all the other podcasts?
It's just in our nature, man. I don't have any other answer for it beside that. But the most important thing is that I think we can dive into it on this episode, because we're going to be talking about why we do the things we do.
I think it's about the way we decide and our behaviors and psychology, isn't it? Am I wrong here, Paul?
Yeah, well, and it may be that the motivation for our iconoclasm is simply to get a reaction. We're the kid throwing gum in class.
But did we bring enough for everyone? That's the question.
Well, that's what we're trying to throw it around. You know?
Share with them what's on the show today.
On the show today, we talk about decision science and behavior and psychology. It's an article from psychologicalscience.org. We talk with Nika Kabiri from Kabiri Consulting about decision science and the things that make people do what they do. And then we do a little research of our own by asking our guests 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The link today is from psychologicalscience.org. It's by Eric Wargo. It's entitled The Mechanics of Choice. I'll give you an intro and then we'll provide our hot takes. Eric starts this way. Hardly a minute goes by in our lives when we don't make them. Decisions can be as small as our choices of words or what to have for lunch, and they can be as big as how to plan for retirement or what treatment to choose for a disease. They can balance certainties against risks. They can balance short-term gratification against long-term benefits. They can clearly be right or wrong, but often enough, they involve likelihoods and possibilities that are uncertain, even in the light of all available information. Then he goes on to outline the different ways decisions are made, rationally, irrationally, heuristically, generalizations, fast thinking, slow thinking. It gets really deep. Before I give my take on this, what was your take on this one, Paul?
Well, first of all, when he was starting out this article, he should have had the word decisions first. So
right.
Decisions. Hardly a minute goes by in our lives when we don't make them.
I know. The grammar messed me up too.
Yeah. It's like, wait, what? Minutes? I don't make minutes. Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting through this one, honestly.
Really?
There's a ton of stuff in here, kind of deep,
Very deep.
lots of statistics and stuff like that. But there were a couple things that jumped out at me that reminded me of some of the things that I can understand.
Right.
And one thing that I thought was really cool was expected value.
Hmm.
That's something, I like to use poker as a metaphor a lot. Expected value is a poker term too that we have, and I like that it's built on expectations. So a lot of these decisions, a lot of these things we make, we're trying to weigh the positives and negatives. And so there's this thing that looking at everything's possible outcome and values and see whatever, and there's a calculation and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of cool. That's something that I think I can kind of validate from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing to sort of build on top of that is loss aversion. I think a lot of people,
it's a big one.
yeah, and I think particularly with legal, that's something that gets leaned on a lot. Particularly with things, when we're looking at advertising, it's like get the money you deserved. Don't get raked over the coals by the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool in here that they say winning $100 is only about half appealing, as losing $100 is unappealing. So it's kind of like that's kind of a thing.
And it kind of defines the scared money of marketing is we're thinking that if we keep telling everybody that they have the world to gain, that they'll come a knocking. But really, they're more geared to see loss and how they can avert that. So telling them that there will be abundance is not playing along with what we know to be true, which is I would rather lose nothing than gain some weird thing. Is that sort
right?
of, that's sort of what, but it's a little bit irrational, and marketers don't understand that because we're like, it'll be the best ever. And maybe that's partially true to provide aspiration, but you need to be realistic or else it comes off completely unrealistic. It's true.
Yeah. So what did you get out of this thing? What did you focus on?
Dude, well, I'm so thankful that you brought Nika back on. Decision science, I think, is at the heart of it all for me. All the themes that we kind of wrestle with on this show, marketing, business development, legal tech. If you can understand how people make decisions, then you can use that in your marketing efforts, use that to make decisions about legal tech, use that about how you develop your business. And be more mindful of it and use it in concert with the way we actually think and not with the way we wish we thought. My hot take is that I think there's two different worlds where we wish we could think and act and behave, and where we live and where we act and behave and how we actually do things. And my hope would be that marketers and law firms that are paying them to, bring their law firms out into the marketplace understand that the two conceptions, that there's a reality and then there's this aspirational thing. And when you inject marketing communications into that, you have to be considerate of the way people make decisions and the way they perceive information. And so I'm interested in this stuff because I think you can use it to make great advertising. But I think a lot of people are interested in this stuff to brainwash people, to create, but you think if I know I can manipulate you in this way, then I can get you to buy a product. And I think over time, you're going to find that won't work in the long term. So understanding decisions, decision science, hearing about behaviors and the way you can change your own and the way you can maybe elicit those in others. It's fascinating stuff. And Nika drops it. This article is really fantastic because it highlights those areas, but Nika brings it into an applicable arena where you can take all the learning and bring it back to your life. I think this is the heart of it.
Well said. There's a lot in here. I do have a question about this article. I don't know if I'm just being an idiot, but it cites 21 different references in here. I can't find anywhere on it, but that seems like a lot, but I can't find the list of them.
There's an add on here for understanding my brainwave patterns too. I can buy something here that will
Oh,
read
really?
my. So this is weird.
Yeah, hook me up.
It is interesting that the citations are hard to find. So vetting this information on how people vet information and make decisions, it's a little bit meta here.
Yeah, that's strange. I don't know. It just kind of popped up. I'm going to go hook myself up to this biopack system and read my brain waves.
Yeah, let's get our theta lines, theta waves all together.
Hmm.
It's a good article. Go check it out.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it. And then let's go to Nika's interview where we talk about decisions, decision science, behaviors, marketing, law firm development, and life, and all that goodness.
Yep. Let's go.
Get your brainwave measurers.
Get those electrodes taped on. And
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Since 1999, Consultwebs has been helping law firms connect with clients on the web, connect digital marketing success with firm success, and connect their business goals to proven strategies that help them get the most out of their legal marketing. Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a lawsome interview.
Nika Kabiri has spent over 2 decades studying how people make decisions in a variety of contexts, including society, business, and politics. She received her PhD and master's in sociology at the University of Washington, a JD from the University of Texas School of Law, has led research projects for clients in the nonprofit, retail, tech, and legal sectors, including directorial stops at Avvo and Ipsos, a market research company. Now, Nika brings her unique combination of market research expertise, consumer behavior insights, and rigorous academic training to Kabiri Consulting, which helps businesses effectively influence consumer behavior and make better decisions on their own. We are very grateful she could find the time to join us today, and for the 3rd time on the show, Nika, welcome back.
Thank you. You read that with such drama.
I have to read it, or else I have to just focus on my elocution and my enunciation.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's a lot of
Well, that's you. That's you. That's your life. It's hard to pronounce all the fantastic stuff that you've done.
It's hard to live it too.
So why don't you give us a top level definition of decision science and how it's similar or different to other types of behavior study?
Sure. So I think decision science is kind of a newer thing. So different people think about it different ways. I know there are decision scientists who focus on decision making specifically for machine learning or for AI. But the way that I approach it is really about understanding human decision making. And the way it's different from other types of behavior study is that it's not just behavioral economics. It's not just behavioral sciences. I think a lot of people are really find behavioral econ just super fascinating and sexy, but it still doesn't tell the whole story, in my opinion. There's a lot in psychology research, sociology research, anthropology research that can kind of flesh out just how the understanding of how people make decisions. So, which is really the focus of decision science. It's not about understanding behavior; it's about understanding that decision-making process. So it's broader. And like, for example, you might make decisions based on, your understanding of different outcomes and how positive or negative they might be to you. And behavioral econ might tell you what shortcuts you might make or what biases you have in making those decisions. But if you don't take into a consideration the role of culture in kind of defining what certain outcomes mean, you might not be really paying attention to the weights of these different outcomes. So if I choose option A because it's going to make me look better to my friends or because it's going to give me status socially, that's something that matters, and you have to take into that into consideration as well. So it's kind of it's more full, it's more robust. Does that make?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. And so it's a contextual understanding of decisions. And I think a lot of people are wondering, well, why would they make such crazy decisions? Do you find that there isn't Or is there a hierarchy to decision making that people make? In a lot of the research that I've found, a lot of the choices we make, product wise or marketing wise, are very illogical and maybe not
Mhm.
rational at all. When analyzing a decision, and there's all these different factors, and you're talking about social, cultural, environmental, what are the ways that things can be overridden, like rational decision making, like that decision science can go amok because of context? Is there any specific examples you have there that maybe can speak to that?
Well, first, I want to say that I am probably most likely to kind of call people out on making bad decisions, and myself as well. But it's so human. It's like such part of who we are to just use mental shortcuts, to be biased, to be influenced by our social environment and our culture. It's almost like, and this is just an aside, but it's almost like making bad decisions is the norm, and
Mm-hmm.
making good decisions is like, oh wow, bonus, I made a good one, right? Um,
That's how it feels in my life.
yeah, I mean, we just aren't, we're survivalists, we're not perfectionists. So, um, but as far as the question about hierarchy, like, what factors override others, I think that's also, I mean, it's the answer to that question is the worst answer to every question, which is it depends, right? It just also depends on the situation. And I hope I got your question right. I'm not
Mm-hmm,
sure if I'm
mm-hmm.
answering it right, but it's almost like the nature versus nurture question, right? It's which matters more, but the truth is they both matter. In different situations, one might matter more than the other. It depends on what's going on. But yeah, I don't really see a hierarchy as far as does what go on what's going on in our brains, does that override what's going on around us as
And
far as what's pushing
and I
us?
think this was a question Paul had here, and I'm sorry, I kind of you're bringing out a different aspect of it. Was, do we make decisions based on our tribal affiliations, and then our cultural affiliations, and then our environmental affiliations, and then is there some kind of decision sphere that comes from us essentially? And I think, is that what you were talking about, Paul? Is that there's a hierarchy for that?
Well, yeah, I was looking at all the different aspects on Nika, on your website that you talk
Mhm.
about that can have an effect on decisions, whether it was cultural, social stuff like that. And I was just curious if there was some kind of thing where like does you know age and peer group always override maybe your current work I don't know. I mean, I guess
Right.
that's just what I was thinking of, was like
And right. So it depends is the
it
answer. And that's why
depends.
it's just
Well, it
very
makes
Yeah.
sense. No, that's a good
unsatisfying.
answer. Yeah.
It's I mean, it's complex, right? Like all of these things that are like our age, our peer group, our, mental deficiencies, our stress levels, how much we sleep, how much coffee we drink, like all of these things impact decision making. And so, depending on which of those things we're interacting with the most, or have which has the most influence on us in that moment, I mean, I think it's really just contextual.
Mm.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, the way that, and this is me being trained as a sociologist, the way that I like to think about it is really just choice within constraints. Like we have all of these social or cultural constraints on us, like norms that tell us how we should and shouldn't behave, or, cultural expectations. And then we're kind of trying to exercise free will within these like guardrails. So in a way, those constraints are always there if we don't pierce them, right? If we don't
Mm.
kind of challenge them.
Yeah. Well, I guess too, I was thinking of it like, um, one thing that's always thrown at me, whether it's, from some, pseudo business coach or a, optimizing, conversion rate optimizing specialist or whatever they want to call themselves, is
Right.
always like, you got to go, what's in it for me? Whatever it is you're doing,
Mm.
what's in it for me? That's what you're always trying to, provide these people, whatever copy or ads or whatever it is you write. And I guess what I was going with this was like, but maybe that's not the most important part of the decision that you need to address
Mm.
given the certain circumstances.
Like as a marketer or as an advertiser, do you
Yeah,
mean?
I guess in
Like,
marketing
yeah.
communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, anything like that, or if yeah, communications, even public relations, like anything like that. I guess we always get it as like there is a hierarchy, and at the top of it is what's in it for me.
Right.
But I'm just curious, like, if is that, I mean, is that
Is that self-centered?
Maybe,
Yeah.
well, I mean, maybe it's not a solid foundation.
It's all about you,
I
Paul.
don't know.
Yeah, right.
It is. It is. What's in it for me
Well, see,
specifically? Why am I
Paul.
here?
Yeah.
right. Well, I mean, I think for me, the liberating thing about decision science is that it's exactly about that. Like how do you make the best decision to get you what you need, right? And
Nice.
sometimes the answer when you ask it that way is very different than what's in it for me, even though essentially
Mm.
those questions are the same. You're trying to
Mm.
optimize your business, right? You're trying to, as a lawyer, for instance, you're trying to get as many clients as you possibly can. Let's just say that's your goal. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of lawyers
Of
don't
course
want
it
that
is.
actually.
Right.
But, if that's your goal, then the question becomes like, how do I make the right decisions to get there? And how do I influence the decisions of prospective clients so that they will want to choose me over someone else? And then you have to think about, well, what's in it for them? What is going to influence their decision making in that way? What are they looking for? What do they want? If you just focus on what you're getting out of it, you do
Mm.
start to put these blinders on and you aren't really thinking about the bigger picture and making strategic decisions. You're starting to make shortcut decisions that feel better in the moment, or I think that's the situation where people are more inclined to go with their gut.
One of the biggest things that we use is repetition. If we say
Mhm.
something about our company or a product often enough, eventually it'll just stick. So, is this lazy marketing or is there something to this? And if you could replace that idea of repetition with a decision science based approach,
Hmm.
what would that look like?
Man, these are tough
Yeah,
questions.
that is tough.
Oh, no, it's
Um,
not.
okay, so um, I actually recently wrote a blog post about this on my website, and it was about Hurricane Dorian approaching the Florida coast or the Carolinas. I think it was a guy on the radio who was talking about how he wasn't too worried about Hurricane Dorian coming his way because he was around for the last 3 hurricanes and nothing really happened then. And so he's not really quite worried about that, right? So he had this repetitive experience of these past hurricanes and nothing bad really happened. So he's drawing a conclusion that nothing bad is going to happen, right? Now, not to mention, first of all, that hurricanes don't repeat themselves, right? There's no reason to believe that Dorian, even though it did kind of behave similarly, there's no reason to believe that it would have, just because the other ones did. But the bottom line is that because he experienced this repetitive experience, right? And it happened to be a particular way, he kind of strung together this story for himself that was, okay, I don't have to worry about it. But there are all these other elements to it, like those hurricanes weren't bad. If they were bad, he would have remembered those. He would have recalled those. So if you're repeating an ad and it's a crappy ad, or if it's irrelevant, or if the content isn't quite right, then it really is going to make a difference. Repetition obviously isn't everything. But not only that, this guy's got all this other stuff going on. He's got hopes. He hopes that he doesn't get, his home doesn't get damaged by the hurricane. He's got fears. He's got these mental shortcuts he's using. He's probably got a community around him who's also like trying to offset these negative emotions and deciding not to do anything about it because it's just, it's easier emotionally to just not worry. So, when you're advertising to people, they've got all these other stuff, this other stuff going on. They're being influenced by these other things. They're going to string together a story about you based on the ads they're seeing over and over and over again by you. But the point is, what's the story? What's the story that they're going to get from it? So if you don't understand your consumer, if you don't understand how they're making their decisions, what's going on in their lives, and where your business as a lawyer fits in that, then you're kind of missing the point. Um, and for instance, if you're a criminal defense attorney, clients are probably coming to you under a lot of stress. That's important. People under stress are likely to make impulsive decisions. If they feel out of control, they're likely to make hyper risky decisions. They are likely to feel more over confident. So, there's all this stuff going on. You have to really understand the psychology there so that your ads are effective and speak to that decision making.
Mm. So how do you get lawyers to get out of the narrative of themselves? Because one of the key
Mm.
revelatory moments recently in the show was that clients don't know what good lawyering is.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So, okay, so I like this. This is very. I feel like I'm on The View now.
No, they
Now, see, but I don't
don't.
want to open this up. But it turns out that asking everybody how they're going to develop their business and establish themselves in the marketplace, they say just do good work, just focus on that work, and that seems like a repetitive narrative. That's like some
Mhm.
Hurricane Dorian stuff right there. Besides what you just said, which is very brilliant, how are you helping clients? I mean, of all types of industries, not just lawyers here, break out of this narrative that they don't need to establish a brand or do something repetitive in a marketplace that would build some memorable assets. Like, I mean, what you're talking about is providing a reason to think about someone. And it's
Right.
interesting because that's
Right.
marketing, or, like, so how do you help people defeat that narrative of that I don't need it, or it's not for me, especially lawyers?
Yeah. So there's some basic steps that you can take to make sure that you aren't. I mean, what this is to me, what this all really speaks to
Mm,
is the behavioral economics concept of overconfidence, right? Which is a thing, and it's not just a layperson thing. Like, oh, he's overly confident. There's there's actually a phenomenon where people feel they know, believe in their hearts of that they know way more about a subject matter than any evidence would indicate they should. So lawyers are not immune from this. Clients are not immune from this. A client can come into your office. I mean, I know many. I've talked to many lawyers who've had this experience. Clients that come into their office and they know so much about the law. They're calling lawyers out on their advice. They're
mm,
they're being critical, and really they don't know anything. And it's this kind of this attempt to sort of have control over your situation in these times of extreme uncertainty for them.
mm,
And research in behavioral economics, behavioral sciences has shown that the more difficult something is, the more likely overconfidence is going to show up. So
mm,
because specifically for the reason that people cannot very accurately judge how hard something is. If they don't know about it, they don't know how hard it is. So a layperson has no sense of how hard the law is. They're going to come to your office and assume they know it all because they don't know how much there is to know. But lawyers are the same way with marketing. They're not trained marketers, they're not trained advertisers, and they think they know, and they know so much about what they need to do, but it's not easy. What you guys do at Consultwebs, it's not easy work. It takes
mhm,
a lot of thinking and strategy and work to do that. And without knowledge of all of that work you guys have to do, it's really easy to kind of just say, "Oh, well, I can do that too." It's not that hard. And again, this is human nature. Like, this is not. I'm not trying to judge anyone. I
mhm,
do it too. But the best way to get out of that is to stop and ask yourself, okay, what is the evidence that I have that supports what I know? Like, how do I know what I know?
mm,
People don't often seek out information to prove themselves wrong, but if they did, they'd realize how little they know and how much overconfidence they have. But that's really the step that I take with my clients is, okay, show me, like, prove you're in the courtroom and you're proving to me that you know how to market your business. How do you know this? Show me the
whoa.
evidence that you know this, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my God, does that
Um,
Yeah.
get weird? That gets weird. I feel weird right now, even just
No.
saying that.
You know what this reminds me of? It's every 4 years when I'm watching the Olympics. Like,
uh-huh.
I don't know anything about figure skating, but after 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, he was a little late on that triple toe.
Oh,
Oh,
He
you
exactly.
should
need to
4
tuck that
points off.
in.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you don't.
You know
Right.
what I mean? I
Oh,
have
no,
no
no.
idea.
Oh, no. And if you're me and you're watching that, you think you can go out the next day and actually do it.
Totally. Like, man, archery looks easy.
Not that hard, not that big
Yeah,
of a deal.
whatever.
Right. But of course, like, there's a way you tell
Uh,
clients this. Like, when I work with my clients, I'm not like, "Well, prove it." It's
Slap them around.
Yeah.
it's more like,
Especially with lawyers. That's a bad
yeah,
track.
yeah, and it's collaborative. It's let's make sure that we're on the right track here. Let's gather the evidence to support the idea that yes, you should be advertising on Facebook to millennials when you're an estate planning attorney in Miami, right? Like,
Right.
let's make sure that you really know we have the data to support this, and that's where research really is important as well. you can only make good decisions if you have good information.
Mm.
And
So
a lot of people don't. Yeah.
get that information or seek for it. But then I'm wondering, how can you? The next question is about mindfulness and introspection, and I'm thinking that there's multiple different voices inside of our head. Like, I think people like, be mindful, just listen to yourself, and you're like, but
Oh
which
gosh.
self could I possibly trust? Because at once I'm Batman, and at once I'm Emily Dickinson, and at once I'm Frankenstein, and at once I'm Jake, just some kind of schmo here in Panera waiting for his sandwich. And please don't look at me because I have something wrong with my face. Introspection, like just listen to yourself. Is that like the awareness? Like just be aware. Is this being misused by like coaches or tarot readers who live in Astoria, Queens? Is there something there about just being mindful and that's being the answer, or how do you come to the decisions inside your own brain? Besides what how do I know what I know?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this mindfulness awareness stuff? Speak on that kind of culture, and then how do you counter that with your beakers and science?
Okay. So I might upset a lot of people by saying that I am very much challenged by this idea of self-awareness. How the heck do I know that I'm paying attention to everything that I need to pay attention to? I mean, the whole point behind self-awareness is the idea that there are things about myself that I'm not aware of. So, how do I know that I'm aware of them until I become aware of them? I don't know if this is making any sense,
No,
but
it's very quantum. It makes perfect sense.
Yes,
there
absolutely.
there's a ton of crap about me that I still have not discovered.
Mm,
And I can be as self-aware as I believe I am, but we all have blinders,
mm, mm,
and so looking inward and turning inward and thinking inward and being self-aware and me, not only is it pulling you out of the context that you're in and assuming that you're living in this vacuum, which you're not, but it's also this like exercise of infinite regress where you never really quite know if you're hitting the bottom. I think the reason why decision science is so, I don't know, important to me anyway, is that it's not just a way of practicing my business. It's a way of practicing living in that it forces you to be educated on human nature. So I don't really look inside as much as I look to the science. So what does the science tell me about why people make decisions they make? Why they're swayed the ways they're swayed. And then I can suddenly when I read this stuff, I have these light bulbs. It's like, oh, that's why I haven't reallocated my investment portfolio in 10 years, right? Like,
mhm,
because I'm exercising omission bias or choice deferral and I'm doing it to manage my negative emotions,
mm,
or, that's why I'm afraid to, give this really great guy a chance. I'm speaking hypothetically, right? Like, because the last 5 guys I dated were crap and they're all crap, and maybe,
mhm.
maybe that's just a mental bias that I have or a shortcut that I'm using. And that kind of enlightens me to, okay, there's a scientific way of thinking about the world. There's a better way of thinking about the world. So
Well, here,
that's my approach.
let me
Yeah.
counter this and just say, find the science that fits your life, because that's another thing I'm coming up against is like,
Hmm.
um, this is a science. What you're talking about, behavioral science, in
Um,
laboratory experiments, people have done empirical evidence based on these things, blind taste tests, all of this stuff, years of research, and that is the core, the corpus of behavioral science. But then if
yeah.
somebody gets an astrology reading that they dig, or they just, feel the fortune cookie is like talking to them,
Hmm.
or they get a bug in their ear and they're like, I'm going to start a podcast, or oh, I'm going to go invest in, a car dealership right next to my personal injury law firm. It's a great idea. It's very entrepreneurial, but I'm just, I'm, I'm seeing that that's science, but people will dismiss it. How then would you counter that again? Because I think we're entering the upside down, because people are like,
Yeah.
sure, that's what you think science is, but this is just how I believe it. I mean, how do you counter this? I mean, what's your thought
Yeah.
besides just walking away?
Well, I think I think about science as a process, not as a belief system. I don't believe that everything that research or science tells us is something that we should have an opinion on. It's really about the process. Did the if you are following a particular set of rules, right? To first of all, I mean, we all learn this in middle school or high school. Hopefully, the scientific method. You develop a hypothesis that stems from a theory about the way the world works, the way people are, or the way gravity is, or whatever.
Mm.
And then you set out to conduct experiments or you gather data to not prove your hypothesis to prove you're right or disprove your hypothesis to prove somebody else is wrong, but to test it objectively. And then you evaluate the data, and it's really lifelong. Like, as you gather more data over life, you learn more, you can test your hypothesis more. And I have many hypotheses about myself. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes I have this hypothesis sometimes that I'm stubborn. Okay, is that true? Let me look at the data. Let me look at the
Mhm.
behavior that I'm engaged in. What are people saying? Should I modify that behavior? Um, it's really about that. And
Mm.
I think if you stick to that, it's really not about what you believe. If anyone says to me, I don't believe that science, or the research says that, but I don't buy it, I literally roll my eyes because I'm like, well, what don't you buy? Like, what is there
Mhm.
to believe or not believe? Is it the
Mm.
process that's wrong? Did somebody lie in their interview? Like, what is it that you're
Mhm.
not believing?
Mm. And there's something in that chain of decisions that's led them to feel like that is the choice that they come to. And maybe it
Hmm.
is all of these fractals of decisions interacting with each other in this prismatic reality that the only way forward wouldn't be to know that there would be an empirical thing that we all could agree on, that there's this truth,
Hmm.
but that there's an ability, and this is where lawyers are really excited. They're at the kind of nexus of this place where we can discuss how we feel and think and move towards decisions together.
Yes, yes, and objectively
Mm.
and scientifically. And you bring up a really good point because I think a lot of times people reject not just science, they reject what they hear for very emotional reasons. There's a lot at stake in changing your mind. There's a lot at stake in admitting that you're wrong. There's shame in it. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it takes a really kind of objectively minded and brave kind of disposition to just say, okay, I'm gonna remove myself. And this is where self-awareness and introspection and mindfulness kind of bother me a little bit. It's like, remove yourself from the situation and look at the process. You're a human being just like other human beings. What's this process that you're engaged in as you're making these decisions? No judgment. It's just the scientific process of evaluating what you're about.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not going to survive every hurricane, going back to your earlier
Yeah,
example.
right.
It just like,
There's gonna
evidence
be one.
states one's going to get you. It
One's
doesn't
gonna
One's
matter.
gonna
get
You
you.
stay in the
get
same place long enough.
It's
That's
gonna
it,
get you.
But emotionally, yeah, you choose to ignore that because I love my house. I don't
right,
want to lose
Right.
my car.
Right.
right.
So I have to believe in this. So given that, what's one thing that our listeners can start doing like right now or today that would help them start using decision science in their law firms or in just their decision making processes in their lives?
Mhm.
I think if I were to stick to one thing, there's so many things, but it's to ask why about pretty much everything you decide to do. If you can ask yourself in a really objective way, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing TV advertising over social media advertising or digital advertising? If you can ask yourself that and then really seek out the information to answer that question, then you're really already 50% to 60% there in making a better decision. I think oftentimes we do what we feel is right. We go with our gut. We go with what's been done before or what other people are doing. We're taking all of these shortcuts. We're not slowing down. I think asking why slows us down.
So I'm gonna ask you why are you so amazing? And then I want to ask you another question. How can people get with you. I mean, do you do marketing? It sounds like you have amazing advice here. Is it for marketing? Is it for internal firm culture? Is it just for, are you like a lawyer whisperer? Like what?
I just had this weird image of me like doing the little Caesar Milan to a lawyer.
I bet
You know
they'd
what I
be
mean? Like that
thankful
little-
for it.
Like,
They would
stop it.
brag. They would brag
Stop
to
it.
their person. You'd be in this son of the courtroom, and they look over at you. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do
Come on,
you
lawyer,
do
we're
that?
going on a
Okay,
walk.
so you don't do that. But how?
I don't not do that. I don't do it that way. I'm really okay. So I see what I do in three buckets. I look to social science literature, behavioral economics, sociology, psychology, anthropology to help businesses, including lawyers, make their own best decisions, but also understand how to influence the decisions of other people, including their clients. Maybe there's just two buckets. And then the second part is doing original research to do that. So yes, it is, I do work with people where I am trying to help them make sense of the information they have and help them avoid the pitfalls that they could make as they're moving towards the right decision. But a lot of what I do is also helping companies understand their target consumers, their lives, what they're doing, how they're thinking, so that the right marketing messaging can get to them, so that the right packaging and product can get to them. And so that's pretty much the gist of it.
And so are you on Kabiri Consulting, or what's the web destination? Or
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn?
Yeah. KabiriConsulting.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Nika Kabiri, K-A-B as in boy, I-R-I. I have a blog. So if you once a week, 4 minutes or less, I'll share an insight on decision science to help you make good decisions or help you understand how to shape the decisions of other people. And I do talk about lawyering in there from time to time because I do a lot of work with legal tech companies. So yeah.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
It was a novel called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? But can I tell you what I'm excited about reading next?
Sure.
I'm so excited about reading Mindhunter. I'm so into, I don't know why I'm into serial killer psychology, but
Weird.
yeah. So excited.
Well, if you talk about conviction, follow through, serial killers. Attention to detail.
No, I mean, and then also like, why those decisions? Like, why are they doing anyway?
Perfect.
We're not all that far away from it. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, right.
So anyway, number 2, what is your favorite place?
My favorite place. Oh, I remember what I said last time. And I think I've only done this once before. I said it was like in my head with my ideas.
Yes, you're brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That hasn't changed.
I don't know if I'm brilliant. I just, I'm a little, maybe a little too introverted. Probably not. Hasn't changed.
Okay. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Oh, probably the same ones as before. So I love The Daily by the New York Times, the Business Daily by the BBC. I don't really go to podcasts for much entertainment, just stuff, just news.
Yeah, neither do we. Yeah. Number 4, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
For some reason, salsa is popping in my head right now.
Like a pico or a tomatillo, or where are we at?
But I grew up in Texas, so it's like you have to have that with everything.
Number 5, after a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Chill out with my boyfriend and my cat.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawson.